Well, good afternoon. We've got a gloomy day here. This isn't typical California weather, but you know what? We got a gloomy state. But bright days are ahead, just like the weather, so with the political climate. If we can get people like Ron DeSantis elected to represent our nation. So I just want to welcome Governor DeSantis and distinguished guests to Los Angeles Harbor Grain Terminal. My name is Dwight Robinson, and I'm the president and CEO of our business. Our company was founded in 1958 by my wife's grandfather, Howard Wallace. In the late 1960s, my father-in-law, Howard Jr., joined the business, and it flourished. We did well, and we grew. We were able to hire a lot of people and ship a lot of product. Today, the third generation, my wife Holly and I, my brother-in-law Adam and his wife Elisa, and my sister-in-law Jamie and her husband Todd are working hard day in, day out to keep this family business, this legacy, alive. But it's becoming more difficult with each passing day as we watch California deteriorate. Here at LA Grain, we employ 85 people, and every year we physically load and export 20,000 of these ocean containers, containing about 1 billion pounds of U.S. agricultural product that's grown in the heartland of America and shipped around the world to developing nations that need food to eat, protein in their diets, and that's what we do. We own 23 big rigs, including the ones you see behind me, and we use those to deliver the 20,000 containers to the port docks each year. We're gathered here today to talk about those big rigs and yet more burdensome government regulations that have left and will continue to leave our state in an economic malaise if we don't course correct immediately. Unfortunately, instead, in 3 short months, the California Air Resources Board's drayage truck rule goes into effect. This new regulation requires that all new drayage trucks registered to operate in California's ports will have to be zero emission, basically battery electric or hydrogen powered. Those trucks barely exist today. They barely exist. And they're in very small numbers. And the infrastructure is essentially non-existent. Many nights, I truly lie awake at night worried about the future of my business, what those regulations are going to do to impact what we do here, the people we employ. Will my employees be able to provide for their families, or will more progressive regulations eliminate their jobs by pushing our customers to ship their products from other parts of the country, or worse yet, from other parts of the world? I know a thing or two about this topic because in addition to running this business, I've been a city councilman and a mayor. And more pertinent to today's discussion, I was elected to our region's Air Quality Management District Board and served from 2016 to 2020. This board is the largest pollution control district in the U.S., encompassing a population of nearly 20 million. While on that board, I tried time and time again to educate my Democrat colleagues about the trucking and logistics industry and what it takes to run a real business that provides an essential service, and to help them understand the long-term ramifications of the actions they were taking. More times than not, my words didn't resonate because they did nothing more than regurgitate the progressive talking points. But practically speaking, what are those ramifications? We've got increasing the cost of shipping, resulting in inflation for all consumer goods. Every time California passes more regulations, and I used to say this on the AQMD board, I envision champagne bottles popping along the eastern seaboard as they celebrated their new one business. And California has lost a lot of business to the East Coast ports over the last few years, some of which will never return. And this is going to make it worse. Curiously, this will result in actually increasing overall pollution. You might ask how. It's going to push import and export cargo away from the most efficient routes, causing the cargo to move through the Panama Canal to the Gulf or the East Coast ports, and then eventually to its final destination. It's going to result in more miles traveled, which results in more pollution. I tried to get my colleagues to see this, and they just wouldn't. Another ramification is that many thousands of middle-class and blue-collar logistics jobs in California will continue to be lost. My motto has always been that we need to continue to be good stewards of the environment while also protecting and growing middle-class jobs and small business. That used to be a reasonable position held by people on both sides of the aisle, but not anymore. For all those people who think you can't reduce emissions without eliminating diesel trucks, I say hogwash. It's absolutely ridiculous. The Port of LA and the Port of Long Beach, along with the trucking industry, have been doing just that. The Port of LA just released numbers 3 weeks ago showing that still, while using diesel trucks, we were able to reduce diesel particulate matter by 88% compared to the 2015 baseline year that they base everything off of. The nitrogen oxide levels were down 62% and the sulfur oxide levels were down 97%. So we're already making impacts, and we just need to continue to focus on that. But instead what we have is a rule that's going to put some of us out of business. It's going to raise costs for everything that we're buying, and it's going to put some of my employees on the unemployment line. And that's exactly why I'm glad that the governor's here today. I truly feel that my state doesn't care about my business or the people I employ. This should make me angry, but instead, it makes me sad. I'm a fourth-generation Californian and a third-generation business owner. My governor's never visited my business, but a governor from 2,200 miles from here is here today because he cares. And for that, I'm glad. Governor DeSantis, I was hoping you would run for president long before you announced, because I know that you're with us. You will stand up and fight for small business class and blue-collar workers, not the crony capitalist corporations and organizations that are seeking to use government and regulations for their own self-interest. It's an honor to have you visit us today, and I'm proud to introduce Governor Ron DeSantis.
Thanks. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. We've been out in California all week in anticipation of and now in the aftermath of the presidential debate at the Reagan Library. I remember, growing up in Florida, California was a long way away for me. I never got to spend much time here until I was in the U.S. Navy and got orders to Naval Amphibious Base Coronado to join Naval Special Warfare Group 1 in anticipation of a deployment to Iraq. This is 15, 16 years ago that happened. And I'll never forget checking into the bachelor officer in beautiful Coronado. And as a Floridian, the first thing I look for is the air conditioning. And they say, you don't need air conditioning here. Just open the window. It's nice. And I'm like, okay, great. Open the window. There's no screen on the window. In Florida, you got to have the screen because, we have bugs. No, you don't even need a screen. You just do it. It's nice and fresh. And I'm like, man, this is pretty good. I could get used to this. And we were in there. We were training in Coronado for a while. And then Iraq, not the best place in the world to be. So you come back, and I'll never forget landing at Naval Air Station North Island in Coronado after being in Iraq for all that time, and then just getting off the C-5 and then the freshness of the ocean air hitting you, and you're like, man, it's great to be back in America. And I understood kind of being out there why so many people for so many decades have built a pathway to come out to California. And so it was a little odd for me when I became governor. Having been born and raised in Florida, I don't think I ever saw a California license plate in my state. Now all of a sudden I become governor, and I got a lot of California license plates showing up in the state of Florida, particularly after COVID started. A lot of my supporters were concerned about how some of those people may vote in Florida because at that time Florida was considered a very competitive state. Now it's not because of all the good things we've done, but at the time there was concern. But what it was a lot of those folks had been driven, some of it by the COVID insanity that was going on in California, some of it by the education, locking kids out of school, some of it was crime and how criminals are not held accountable the way that they need to, taxes and other things, business climate, but we've now been able to have a lot of people move from San Francisco, move from Los Angeles, move from San Diego to different parts of Florida, so they've been able to tell me some of the things that they've done. And I think it'll be an interesting debate when we have on November 30th the debate between me and your governor here in California. I think it'll be instructive, not necessarily about which state's better, because I think people have voted with their feet on that. But as I see the things that are being done in California, this is basically the petri dish for leftism in this country. So whatever Biden's doing, he's a few years behind what they're doing here in California. So I think the things that are doing, like this diesel truck mandate, EV, all that is absolutely going to be done nationally, and I know they're working together on that. So it's really about the future of the country. I think the country's going into a state of decline now. We need to reverse that decline, and the success we've had in Florida shows a model for American revival, and that's exactly why I'm running for president. I want to just give my support to the truckers and the trucking industry. It's something that's very important to us in Florida. When I became governor, we had about 350 truckers, or excuse me, probably about 600 truckers that we would produce through our training programs every year. Now, through a lot of the investments we've made, we're producing 3,500 new truckers every year in the state of Florida. That is important for the economy. You doing your daily thing. A lot of times people don't appreciate how integral these truckers are to our standard of living and our way of life. I know when you had interruptions here, people started to feel that, and that's real. And we need to make sure that this is a vibrant industry going forward, and that means providing people with the pathways to be able to go in. It's not an easy job, but you do have an opportunity to make some pretty good money now. But it's very, very important for a strong supply chain. And in Florida, we're proud of the ports. Yes, some of the business that's left California has actually come to some of Florida's ports. I know we had a big company out of Singapore, I think left Long Beach, I think they did, and they came to Jacksport in Jacksonville, Florida. So we're proud of that. But we know to get those ports to where they need to be, you've got to have strong trucking, and it's important. It also goes into the costs and the inflation that you're having to contend with. Right now, grocery costs are probably double than what they were just 4 or 5 years ago. Things that we used to take for granted are now becoming out of reach. And these are people, you're working hard, you're just trying to raise families, and you get stuck with these big bills. Buying a new home with interest rates at 8%, good luck with that. Our housing market's in big trouble because of that. Even purchasing new cars, the price of cars are up 70% in the last 4 or 5 years. These mandates are going to make those costs go up even more. So you have people that are imposing policies in Washington that are making you pay the bill. They're not paying the bill for it. They just keep doing it. And this is behavior that really started with the COVID lockdowns in 2020, the trillions of dollars that were spent. Of course, that's going to cause inflation. And that's both parties, Republicans and Democrats, that have had a hand in that. And this is making it very, very difficult for people. And if we as a country, if you can't work hard and succeed, raise family, and realize the American dream, if it doesn't work for people that are doing everything right, this country is not going to succeed. And so we need to fix that. And my goal as president, what I pledge to do as president, is to restore that American dream for people all throughout this country. How do you do it? How do you give relief to people who are suffering under these higher prices? There's a number of things we're going to do, but one of the things we're going to do, and it's maybe the closest thing to a silver bullet that we have, is we need to make this country energy dominant. Yes, independent from needing foreign countries, but more importantly than that, we need to be by far the dominant energy producer in the United States. That means we have to use more of our resources here in the United States. We have to choose Midland over Moscow. We have to choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs. And we have to choose Bakken over Beijing. It is good for your bottom line. As president, I want you to pay lower gas prices. I want you to have relief at the grocery store. I want you to be able to afford a home. I want you to have lower interest rates. All that piece of the puzzle is American energy dominance, because the energy costs implicate every single thing we do throughout the entire economy. When energy goes up, not only are you paying more at the gas price, and I'm seeing $7 a gallon out here in California. I don't know how you make that work. If Biden and California leaders have their way, I think that'll go even higher in ensuing years. Good luck being able to afford that. That's totally unacceptable. So we want to lower prices, particularly in California. And there's got to be a way to not let those regulations here cause the price to be as high as they are, because as high as gas has gotten nationally, it is lower than it is here in California pretty significantly. So people here are getting really socked with that. This will help drive down inflation, energy dominance overall, and we need to deliver that for people. But, you know, you look at it, it will help our national security. Why would we want to do things that are going to make us more dependent on China? Why would we want to do things that are going to empower Russia or Iran or Venezuela? It makes no sense. Energy dominance will make this country more secure, and we're going to deliver that. And part of the way we're going to deliver that is we are going to reverse the Biden mandates for electric vehicles. We are going to save the American automobile. You should be able to purchase the car that is best for you and your family. You shouldn't have Washington, D.C. or the state of California telling you that you can only buy the type of car that they want you to buy. They say that this is somehow better for the environment to force electric vehicles, but I can tell you one thing is the things that go into making these come from communist China. I don't see how it's better to rely on China for anything. China's doing a lot with electric vehicles in their own country, but guess what? You can't just look at an electric vehicle and say, what is the emissions from that? You have to look at what is going into creating the power that you need to charge the battery. Where does China get power from? Coal-fired power plants. They're putting two new coal plants come online in China every week. What is cleaner, American oil and gas or Chinese coal plants? So yes, they're going to have EVs, but you got to count all the coal that's burned to be able to power their electric grids. And I think the people that are imposing these mandates are not honest with people about the true environmental cost that goes into the mandate. So we don't want to be dependent on China. We want to be able to do our own fuel here with traditional American automobiles. But you know what? If you want an EV, man, knock yourself out. It is a free country, and that's your right to be able to do that if you want that. I do think that these mandates are going to cost Americans a lot more to be able to afford to purchase a car. And we've already seen when COVID hit, you had the supply chain interruptions, and then you've had the inflation since then. It's made purchasing a car for families almost cost prohibitive in many instances. These mandates are going to make that worse. You're going to have a more difficult time affording an automobile because of government mandates, and that is wrong. Now, I know California has done even more draconian mandates with respect to electric vehicles. What I don't understand is when they announced that, I think it was earlier this year, they announced the way forward there. Eventually, all new cars produced in or sold in California have to be EV. You're not even going to be able to buy a traditional automobile. I noticed that a couple days after that, there was a message sent out to current EV owners saying not to be charging your EV because of stress on the power grid. You have rolling blackouts here. You have problems delivering reliable energy as it is. How are you going to be able to add millions and millions of new EVs on the road using the power grid under your current infrastructure? It's going to be a huge, huge problem, and that's the case nationally too with what Biden wants to do. We don't have the grid capability to be able to do it. So is the future of America rolling blackouts, not having reliable energy? I can tell you this, as governor of Florida, we have to deal with natural disasters. We understand that hurricanes can come, and we just had one a few weeks ago with Hurricane Idalia. One of the things you have to do in those circumstances, and we stage people before the storm, we devote a lot of resources to be able to rapidly restore power for people so that people can get back on their feet. When you need to restore power, I'm not able to do that with windmills. I'm not able to do that with solar. I need oil and gas to be able to do that. I need reliable energy. And these mandates are putting us in a situation where we don't have adequate, reliable energy to be able to meet the needs that this is going to do. So we will take action as president, give Americans relief from that. And so we're here now with the trucks because Biden has worked with your governor to do these electric mandates on these big rigs. And if you look at the big rigs, this is not something that is designed to be an electric vehicle. I mean, these things are designed to run on the diesel, and that's what they need. Ports like Long Beach, I think very soon, all the new sales for big rigs are going to need to be electric. What does that mean for you? Well, all of that EV is going to make all these trucks much more expensive. Do you think that the companies are just going to eat that cost? No, they're going to pass it on to consumers in the form of higher prices for the goods that they're transporting. How reliable will big rigs be that are electric vehicles? Well, I think they get about a radius of 100 miles on a single charge. Then they got to find a place to charge. It takes a long time to be able to charge it again. How is that going to help efficiency? How is that going to help these ports get the most out of what they can do? It's not going to do that. It's going to interrupt the supply chain. It's going to make it more costly and more difficult to be able to do businesses. And we saw what happens when the supply chain is exacerbated. This will basically be baking in supply chain problems as a permanent feature of the American economy. That is wrong. That is bad for Americans, and it's bad for our economy. So we are going to provide relief as president. We need to be smart about this. We need to embrace innovation. We need to embrace consumer choice. We should not be embracing mandates of this kind. And if we want to reverse the economic decline our country's in, it's going to be through invigorating the private sector. It's not going to be through imposing these draconian mandates on top of the private sector. I look at the economy now and see, I don't think there's been a 3 or 4 year period where people have lost more ground than they have in these last few years. Of course, it does go back to the response to COVID, it goes back to the government spending, it goes back to a lot of the mandates that are being imposed, it goes back to not realizing our full energy potential here domestically. We're going to reverse all of those policies, and we're going to provide relief for the American people. In Florida, we've approached all this much different. You want to talk about reducing emissions? Florida has reduced emissions really significantly over the last 10 years. Has that been through mandates? No. What's it been through? It's been through utilizing natural gas more for the power needs of the state. It's cleaner than coal. It's something that has led to a significant reduction. If you're serious about doing things like reducing emissions, you should be embracing natural gas in this country. We have more reserves in places like the Marcellus Shale than anywhere else in the world. We could power the world for decades and decades and decades just with the natural gas we would be able to export from there. The developing world would be able to get online, to be electrified in ways that would be cleaner than whatever pathway they're going. And I think Dwight made a good point. A lot of these mandates, people change behavior. Behavior shifts, capital shifts, and it usually, when there's a green mandate imposed, it usually shifts behavior to even dirtier forms of energy. When we're begging Maduro for oil or getting oil from the Saudis, do you think they do cleaner oil and gas exploration than we do in the United States? No way, not by a long shot. So a lot of those are counterproductive on their face. So we need an economic revival in this country, and that's what we're going to deliver. We also need, and I know people here in Southern California have experienced it, we have huge, huge problems because of the open southern border. Joe Biden is basically derelict in the performance of his duties. He took an oath to take care that this Constitution of the United States was faithfully executed, that he would faithfully enforce the laws of the United States, and now he's allowing the Mexican drug cartels to run roughshod over the southern border. We have millions and millions of people pouring in. We don't know who they are. We know some are coming from Russia. We know some are coming from Iran. We know some are coming from some pretty bad places, and yet they persist on coming through with no end in sight. And it's probably worse today than it's been at any time throughout Joe Biden's administration. Drugs are pouring across the border, human trafficking, sex trafficking, really, really bad stuff. As your president, we're going to put a stop to it on day one. We're going to declare the border to be a national emergency. We are going to restore the sovereignty of this country, and we are going to lean in against the Mexican drug cartels who are responsible for killing tens of thousands of our fellow Americans through fentanyl overdose. And this is happening in communities all across the country, not just in border communities. I've met so many angel moms over the last couple years who've lost kids to fentanyl overdose. And I know that we've got issues in this country with addiction that we need to work on. But the thing that strikes you is you could have a young kid think they're taking some pill. If it's laced with fentanyl, they could die just on that one pill. And these are people that are not even addicted to drugs. They may have made one bad choice, and all of a sudden their life is over. That's brought a lot of pain to communities throughout this country, and it needs to stop, and we will stop it. The other thing that we're going to do is we are going to restore law and order in this country. Just being in Southern California over these last few days, my wife and I have run into 4 or 5 people that reported that they've been mugged in the last year in different parts of Southern California. That was not the case here if you went back 20, 25 years ago. There was a dedication to law and order all throughout the country. Now you have certain jurisdictions where prosecutors are not willing to hold people accountable for criminal misconduct. Some of the laws they just don't want to enforce, and so the inmates end up running the asylum and public safety collapses. And so when people are telling me that when they go shopping, they take off their jewelry because they don't want to get mugged, even in nice places in LA, that's a huge, huge problem. We can't allow people to not do their job and put the citizenry at risk by letting criminals run the street. In Florida, we had 2 different prosecutors who got elected on similar platforms to your prosecutor here in LA County and said, some of the laws they're not going to enforce. Well, I removed them from their posts because that is not their job to pick and choose which laws to enforce. Their job is to faithfully enforce the law and to protect the citizens of their jurisdictions. In Florida, we stand by the police. We support what they're doing. We support their mission. We don't allow prosecutors to let the inmates run the asylum, and we hold people accountable for their criminal misconduct. That has resulted in Florida's crime rate being at a 50-year low. And that's just a matter of will, it's a matter of leadership, and it's a matter of policy. But I'm really proud of what so many people have done. And by the way, anybody in law enforcement out here in Florida, if we recruit you from out of state to come work at one of our agencies, we give you a $5,000 bonus right off the top. And it just shows you that we value what people do in uniform. We know it's integral to have a safe and secure society. And we can talk economy, we can talk education, we can talk about all these issues that are so important. If you don't have safe communities, all that stuff goes by the wayside very, very quickly. So I want to thank everybody who's been here today. I want to thank the truckers. I want to thank everybody associated. It's been great to be out here for the week. We've been able to cover the ground in terms of the debate and all these other things, and we look forward to being able to make it back. We'd love for you to come to our website at rondesantis.com, and we look forward to seeing you in a lot of these early states in the days and weeks and months ahead. Okay, anybody have questions? Yes. So what I've said from the beginning is I'm pro-life and I'm going to support pro-life policies. But what I've also said is, the reality is this is something that is a bottom-up thing where different states are going to approach it differently. And I have not had a lot of confidence in Congress being able to deliver anything productive on a variety of fronts. And so, my position is what it is, but at the same time, I've always said just what the reality is. And so you have Iowa, different than New Hampshire. Obviously, California is going to be much different than Texas. I really believe that every candidate owes it to the voters to show up and earn their vote. And this idea that you can take a poll the year before a primary and then disenfranchise voters by not showing up, that's wrong. You got to show up, you got to answer questions, and you got to defend your record. Republicans lost in 2018, 2020, and 2022. 2022 was probably the most favorable set of circumstances you could have running. Inflation, the country was in the wrong direction. Inflation was high. Interest rates were rising. Crime was bad in a lot of areas. The current incumbent Democrat, very unpopular. You literally just need to show up most of the time and you would pick up a lot of seats. And yet, they lost seats in the Senate, barely won in the House. And the only reason they won in the House was because New York overperformed and Florida had a red wave. We had the red wave in Florida because of leadership. So we have to go, you have to make the case to Republican voters how you're going to be able to get the job done. And I'm somebody that's proven to not only get in these big fights, to win these fights, and then to deliver strong electoral victories. I could serve for 2 terms. I don't think a lame duck president is going to cut it because we know there's so much that needs to be done. So he needs to come and he needs to defend his record. I remember going to his rallies in 2016. A lot of the things he said then, draining the swamp, Mexico paying for the border wall, eliminating the national debt, all these things he didn't do. And now he's running on a lot of the same promises he made back then. I think he owes it to come out and debate. I offered, since Sean Hannity is doing the debate between me and your governor here in California, I told Sean, let's do between me and Donald Trump on Hannity. I'm happy to do that. I think he should show up to the normal debates, but if not, we'll do it. But let's go. He's had a lot to say about me on social media over the last 9 months. Well, now we can get up there and we can make this case in person. Yep.
Sir, donors have invited representatives from your campaign and from Nikki Haley's campaign to meet with them, pitch them, and why you're the number one president. Are you concerned?
No, not at all. I think like anyone that watched that debate the other night saw, there was one person who acted like a president should act. And if you look at how they were carping and all this stuff, to me, I thought it was very off-putting. And my role there was to deliver the message to the American people about how we reverse this country's decline. It was me to deliver the message to the American people that I've actually delivered. All the things they're talking about, I've delivered. You want to talk about budget? We reduced the debt in Florida since I've been governor by 25%. We cut taxes. We reduced tolls. We ran budget surpluses. You want to talk about China? We banned the purchase of land by the Chinese Communist Party in the state of Florida. You want to talk about crime? We have the death penalty for pedophiles reinstated in Florida. We support police with bonuses and making sure our streets are safe. You want to talk about illegal immigration? We banned sanctuary cities in the state of Florida. You want to talk about things like education? We have universal school choice in Florida. Every parent has a right to take a scholarship to a private school. They can go to a charter school. And even within the school districts, they have choices to be able to go. On issue after issue, I've delivered where these other candidates have just talked. And I think it's very clear as you look in these early states where this stands. So we're going to be the candidate built for the long haul. We're going to get the job done starting in the early states, and we'll be able to bring this to a conclusion hopefully pretty quickly. Yes. So everyone that has come illegally under Biden, we got to go, they're sending back. So that's going to be the first priority. That's probably 6 or 7 million people right there. It's going to require a lot of effort. It's going to require us to lean in. But if you don't have a sanction for violating the law, I support building a wall. I support all this. You're going to continue to have it. I would note that the former president is campaigning on the same promise he made in 2016 that he didn't deliver on. In fact, Obama's first term, there were more deportations than under Trump's term in office. Now he's saying he's going to do this great thing. He had 4 years and didn't get the job done. We're going to get the job done, but I definitely think the people that are coming over, kind of last one in, first one out, and we're gonna really push forward strongly on that. Yes. So, I think the bill you're referring to in Florida was we did paycheck protection with respect to teacher union dues, and I think that should be absolutely law. I mean, I look at California and how the teacher union has a hammerlock on the education system here. I think it's been really bad for education in California. We just got ranked #1 by the American Legislative Exchange Council for Education. We're ranked #1 by U.S. News and World Report. The most recent NAEP rankings, the nation's report card, first post-COVID, we're 3rd and 4th, respectively, in 4th grade reading, 4th grade math in the entire country. In Florida, I can tell you, when I was growing up, California education was one of the top, certainly in years before that. Now it's been ranked in the bottom 5. I think there's rankings where they're behind only or ahead of only like Mississippi and Louisiana. And I think it's because of the teacher union. So what we did in Florida is we said, okay, you can join this if you want. They can't automatically deduct dues from your paycheck. Because what they do is they pressure people to sign an authorization form, they give it, and then the dues just come out automatically. So we don't do that with these school unions. If you want to join, you can join, but then you give the money directly to them as you see fit. What that has done is I think it's shown just how much money has been taken out. People can make a judgment about whether they think that's good or not from them. I can tell you the school unions in Florida have fought us on almost everything, and yet I've delivered more pay increases for teachers than any governor in the history of Florida. We've done billions of dollars in increases in teacher salaries, increasing that average minimum salary so that we can recruit more teachers. It's very important. The school unions, though, in Florida, when we said in COVID, every school needs to be open in June of 2020, they sued me in court to try to close schools. So if they had their way, they would have locked these kids out of school for a year and a half, like they did in San Francisco and some of these other places. How they behaved during COVID, and especially in some of these big cities, was a disgrace. They turned their backs on all these vulnerable kids. And the thing that really galled me is you'd have some of these union leaders that would send their own kids to in-person private school because they could afford it. The people that got hammered with those school closures were low-income, working-class families, particularly in urban areas. In Florida, we stood up for those folks. We understood how important it was that those kids could be in school 5 days a week in person. We understood how important it was that parents had the able to get their kids into school. I mean, when you have a single mother who's providing for the family, she can't do that and be an in-person teacher at home and homeschool. So it just didn't work. And obviously the science on it was so backwards to suggest that kids shouldn't have been in school. But those school unions fought us on that. We beat the school unions. We got kids in school in Florida. And I don't think you would see our performance be where it is had we followed what some of these other states did by denying kids the right to an in-person education. We fought, we won, and the kids in Florida are better off as a result of it. Yes. We are in a situation where what they have been doing in Washington for the last 3 or 4 years is shutting down the American dream for American families. You're paying more for everything because of their conduct with respect to borrowing, printing, and spending of money. I think they need to change conduct. I think they need to do things in a way that is not going to exacerbate the inflationary problems that we're seeing fit. So when I get in as governor or as president, I'm going to do like I did as governor, and we're going to be willing to wield the veto pen if they're spending too much money. I vetoed billions of dollars in excessive spending in Florida. I think the record for vetoes had been about $800 million in one budget when I became governor. We broke that record. We did $3.3 billion in 1 year. That was about 3% of our budget that year that we vetoed, and that's part of the reason we've run big surpluses. That's part of the reason why we have reduced our debt, our outstanding state debt, the way we have. So I think these guys need to do what they said they were going to do. They all say government's spending too much money. We know it's caused harm to each and every American. Are they going to reverse course? Are they going to get us on a more sustainable posture? In Florida, we've showed it can be done. Our budget is half the size of New York's budget. And New York has 1 million, 2, 3 million fewer people than Florida does. And yet, anytime these New Yorkers move to Florida, what they'll tell me is how easy it was to get a driver's license, how the services were good, how the roads are better, all those things. So how is it that we can provide what needs to be provided at half the budget? All you got to do is have the will to do it. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for leadership to reverse the economic decline of this country, and that means they have to acknowledge the role that federal spending has played in creating the mess that we have. All right, guys, thanks so much. God bless. We'll see you soon.